Start recording. So good morning, everyone. And I'm really excited to welcome you all here today. My name is Angelica Quezada. I work with the John Humphrey Center for Peace and Human Rights. And as maybe most of you know, about 4 years ago, we started a program called Stride. And that program, we started with the intention of creating throughout the province, a strong community-based human rights advocacy. So we noticed that there's a lot of people around the province who are having issues to access services and to navigate institutions. And so we decided that we wanted to educate and help organize this human rights community-based team of advocates that can support their own communities. And one of the first questions that came to us was like, okay, so if we're educating people and supporting people in this process, what are the basic skills that they need? So we created a set of there were 3 when we were doing it in person. Right now there are 7 now that we do it online, just because the online engagement is a little bit different. But one of those fundamental pieces that we identify was effective listening skills. And so with that because to build relationships with people, when people are going through hard times, when they have felt that their human rights have been, they are not having access to their rights, is difficult. And so listening skills was one of those important parts of training, educating, and building this group of community-based advocates. We were really fortunate at that time to have a good relationship with the Native Council Service of Alberta, and to know Rocky Ward, who is our presenter today, because her way of building those relationships demonstrates the wealth of experience that she has in this field. And we asked her if she could help us building an education piece that support advocates in doing this job. And she was really supportive in this process, and has created this piece of education that is now part of the key pieces of a Stride. So I want to welcome Rocky and thank you again, because this piece is important for doing this work, because your experience has nurtured and helped this program to grow, and for supporting us throughout this. I forgot a really important part, and I'm really sorry, but I have to recognize and acknowledge that we are in Treaty 6, Amaskachee, Edmonton, and for us, it's not just a piece of introduction that we throw every time we start an event or that we are in a meeting. Every time we recognize that we are in Amaskachee, Treaty 6 territory, we always do it with the intention, with the heart-centered intention of recognizing that we are in a land that is colonized, that we have the indigenous peoples that have lived here have gone through a lot of injustices, and that they keep fighting, and that we recognize that resiliency and that we support, and the work we do it with the decolonial lens put on, that we try to look at the reality of this country as a result of a historical process and where we are at, and that we need to understand what is our responsibility as part of that decolonial force that we need and that we urgently need in Canada. So thank you, Rocky, for being with us. Thank you for supporting us throughout this time. And one last thing is, we usually in Stride, we do sessions that we include up to 100 people. In this session, we cap it at 25, with the expectation that we get about 16 people, and that's where we're at right now. Because to talk about listening skills, you need to be able to listen what people are saying and to build these relationships. So please feel free to, at any time, chat through the box, unmute yourself, raise your hand. I will be looking, I'll be watching, and we can address the questions when they come. Thank you, Rocky, again, and it's all yours.
Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Zoom presentation of the Effective Listening Skills. My name is Rocky Ward, and I'm a Métis from the Lac-La-Biche area. I'm a proud mother of 3 adult children and honored to be the grandmother of 6 children. I've been employed at Native Counselling for 23 years. I'm a program manager for the Indian Residential School Health Support Program, as well as the manager for the Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women, Girls, Boys, and Men. As well as that, I work through Children's Services as a home study writer, and I'm also a social worker. And the reason that I'm saying all those things is to just, I guess, maybe almost like legitimize what I'm saying. I've learned a lot along the way. I've taken training as a social worker and as the home study writer, as well as a program manager for both programs. And I'm honored that John Humphrey Center has given me the privilege to present this effective listening skills to you all today. I'm hopeful that at the end of the session, that it'll give you more skills when you're working with your clients and in your communities. And I'm not professing to be an expert in effective listening skills, but I've learned a lot, and I'm hoping that while we're having the chats that I'll learn some more today, as well as you. And so yes, obviously I really enjoy speaking with individuals that have comments or have questions, and please feel free to have your comments and your questions being presented. And so yeah, so now I'm going to get on with my presentation, and so it's called, of course, effective listening skills. And before you can communicate effectively, you also need to be able to listen effectively. And I've been told many, many times, and I've heard many times, that that's the reason we have 1 mouth and 2 ears, because we need to listen more than we talk. So what is active listening? It is the act of purposefully hearing and attempting to understand the meaning of the words that are being spoken by an individual in a conversation or speech. So that's listening for meaning. And sometimes we just listen, or we just hear the words, but we don't really listen. So that's why I say act of purposefully hearing and attempting to understand. The listener says very little, but conveys empathy, acceptance, and genuineness. And so we'll get on to the next one. Active listening is very important. It can involve making sounds that indicate you are attentive, as well as the listener giving feedback in the form of paraphrasing what has been said, so the other party can confirm that what you're hearing is correct. Now, the making the sounds, it could be like, oh, I see, wow, that's interesting, that must have been hard. Not saying a whole lot of conversation, because you don't want to detract the individual that's speaking. You don't want to, stop them, but just saying those little things that'll just show them that you're listening. And there are instances when paraphrasing is not necessary. One of the examples is someone just wants to get something off their chest. They don't want a conversation with you. They just want to tell you. So you have to be aware of when someone just wants to talk, but they don't want a whole lot of paraphrasing. Sometimes someone wants to just say, I was in a car accident and this is what happened. They don't want you saying anything just except, oh yes. So active listening is very important. Oh, I think I'm sorry. I'm just wondering where it can evolve. Okay, there are instances when paraphrasing, okay, I already wrote that. I'm sorry, this is the first time that I'm doing this on Zoom, so I'm a little bit nervous. So before the sessions, make sure you take care of yourself. Are you thirsty? Did you have anything to drink? Did you have your coffee? Do you need a water? Sometimes when clients come in, if someone comes in, our expectation is that I'm going to take care of this individual right away. Well, if you're not taking care of yourself, you can't take care of someone else. So if you're thirsty, have a drink of water, grab your coffee, go to the washroom, wash your hands, do what you need to do. If you smoke, have your cigarette, If you are on medication, it could be something like your vitamin, or some kind of pill you have to take. Take care of those things. Do a little bit of stretching. Remember your breathing. Do your breathing to orientate yourself, to get yourself to where you need to be. Because like I said, if you can't take care of yourself, then you certainly can't be available for the client. You don't want to be sitting there thinking, oh, I wish I would have went to the washroom before this client came in, or I should have grabbed the coffee. You want to be able to be present with the individual and not think of like, I wonder how much longer before I can go to the washroom, I wonder how much longer before I can grab my cup of coffee. You just want to be there and be prepared. And sometimes it's as simple as pulling your chair up, pushing your chair down, doing all those things. Sometimes people will meditate. And sometimes as workers, I know we don't take our lunch breaks. We work throughout our lunch break. So that's why I said, if you're hungry, make sure that you grab those cookies in the bottom of your purse, grab that apple that's been sitting on your desk for 2 days, whatever you need to do, just make sure that you take care of yourself. So listening, the act of listening is outlined in 2 components. And one is attending, and the other one is context and content. So attending, and it's exactly what it says, is looking at the speaker in a nice way, looking at the speaker and validating that they are there. Orienting yourself physically to the individual to show that you're aware of the individual and to show that the individual has your full undivided attention, and also this shows that you do care. This includes eye contact. And in some cultures, eye contact is not culturally appropriate. So if you notice that the person, when they're talking to you and you're looking at them and they quickly look away, then just look a little bit ahead of, like up on top of them, or look a little over to the side, but be facing the client so that they know that they do have your attention. Nods. Sometimes when someone is talking, all you need to do is to nod to show that you're listening. And not moving around. Sometimes if a client has been there for quite some time, it's a little bit difficult to not move around a little bit, like, throw your shoulders, just get yourself, comfortable again. Well, pay attention to things like that. Try not to do that. Not being distracted, not, like, oh, I got a nail that's bothering me, or I got to pull my dress down so it's not going too high. And just little things like, don't be distracted. Don't look out the window when someone is talking, and because then it just shows that you're not being attentive. You're not listening to the client. Mirroring their body posture. If they're sitting a certain way, as long as it's comfortable for you, sit that way. Like if they're leaning a little forward, then lean a little forward. If they have their legs crossed and it's comfortable for you, have your leg crossed. Just how the client is sitting, if you're able to do that, then by all means do that. I mean, if they're slouching really badly, of course, you're not going to slouch as well, but just not sitting straight up and it just, kind of like in a, authoritative manner. And leaning forward and using the language that you use, as long as the language is appropriate. Like I know one client, she uses some very heavy language. So I won't use that language, but I won't use the language that I would normally do as a program manager, as a social worker. I would use the language that she uses. You don't want to be one up on them. And it's been researched that about 80% of the communication takes place non-verbally. And that's why we talk about effective listening skills. One of the biggest things is watching for body language, watching their body language and watching your body language. And don't underestimate the power of nonverbal communication. So we'll go on to the next slide. So paying attention to your body language, paying attention to their body language, and practice active listening, just trying to remember all those things. So even for some of us that are maybe a little bit chatty, that we like to engage in conversations, and like we're readily available to give our 15 cents in any kind of conversation that the individual is having with us. One of the things that I've learned and that I've told many people is mentally putting that tape across your mouth. Just, before the claimant comes in, or client comes in, just think, okay, I have that tape across my mouth, because it's not me doing the talking, it's me doing the listening. So just remembering that there's that tape there. Watching your body language. Don't cross your arms when someone is talking. If you're cold and you need to kind of, you know, like bring your body kind of a little bit closer. Make mention to the client, say, you know, it's a little chilly in here, you know, and so I'm just sitting here because I'm a little bit chilly, but then try to do something about that, like maybe open up the doors a little bit so the door, you know, your room warms up a little bit, or maybe moving to another room that's private and confidential. And sometimes I've noticed that people will hold a pen and they'll click the pen when someone is talking, and that's really quite annoying. And don't be tapping your foot when the person is talking. Don't be jiggling your leg. Don't be tapping your fingers on the desk or on the chair or the arm. Paying really attention to what you're doing, watching out that your hands, you know, paying attention to hands. Are your hands kind of, are you clasping your hands? Are you clenching your hands? Are you clenching your jaw? Watching your breathing. Are you breathing like, oh man, I wish this is over? Or, yeah, I'm listening, you know, and sometimes when you're breathing appropriately, the client will also monitor, or will also pay attention to your breathing, and will also breathe the same way that you are. They're, you know, slow, gentle breaths, and they will sometimes, very often, copy that. And the most crucial skill in communication, yet many people are not good at it. That's so listening, you know, paying attention to your body language and their body language. Research has shown that we remember only 20-50% of what we hear. That really blew me away. Listening, observing, capturing and understanding the verbal and nonverbal information that is being communicated by the individual. And sometimes it's like, you know, you think like, okay, am I really understanding? Am I really listening? Just paying attention, listening and observing, listening to what they're saying, how they're saying it, observing their body. Is the person saying, you know, are they talking about something that's really, really horrific to them, but yet they're smiling? And you can mention to them, you can say, you know, when you're talking about the accident that you were involved in, or when you're talking about, you know, the police brutality that you experienced, you're smiling. I'm just wondering what that means. And sometimes it's just, they don't know. It's either I smile or I cry. And they will say to you, oh, if I don't smile, I'm going to be crying. And you say, okay, but just being really aware of, if they're smiling and their body is clenched, their hands are clenched, their body is really tight. And that's a big thing for nonverbal communication. Listening without judgment or interrupting. Sometimes someone will say something, and I've had many clients say to me, when I talk, I don't feel like I'm being judged. And I'll say, I'm wondering, what does that mean to you? And they'll say, well, sometimes I'll say, you know, like I got stopped by the police, and they'll say, well, yeah, because you're Indigenous, or yeah, because you're not from Canada. And so just, you know, just letting them say what they need to say without interrupting, like, oh yeah, I mean, I know how that is because I'm Indigenous. No, just let them speak what they need to say. Encouraging the speaker to continue with short, gentle comments like, oh, I see, tell me more, and things like that. But also don't be afraid of silence. Don't be afraid of space, because in my culture as an Indigenous person, very often when we're talking, we need to think, we need to stop and think about what we're saying. And I'm sure it's like that in many other cultures. But very often in today's culture, culture, when someone stops, we got to fill in that space. But just be comfortable with space. I mean, and if it gets to be too long, then that's when you can say, so do you want to tell me more about that? Or, I see. And just let them know that, like, I'm here for you. And when you're ready to go on, I'm okay with that too. I'll wait till you get off, till you go on. And yeah, so again, so content versus context. Content is the message we wish to relay. And sometimes we get those a little bit mixed up. We listen to the content, but we don't hear the context with the conversation. So context is that which gives meaning to our message. Like, for example, if someone calls you and says he's towing your car, you'd call the police. But if the person identified himself as a tow truck driver and your significant other had asked for the car to be towed to the garage, then you would react totally different. So we need to make sure that we make sense of what we're hearing and stating. So if someone says something and we don't understand what the context of that is, we can ask them, I'm wondering what that means. And they'll tell you. But sometimes, because we've been shut down, and I don't mean as Indigenous, everybody, we've been shut down so often that we'll just get to the point as quick as we can without giving the context. And we really need to listen for the context of the conversation that people are having with us. Empathy. So this is the ability to perceive another person's experience and be able to communicate that person's perception back to them to clarify. It's not about saying things like, I know how you feel. I know that feeling. This has happened to me. Don't tell them a story. It's not about you. It's about their experience. So sometimes when someone is having a conversation, is telling us something, we think that they need sympathy. They don't need sympathy. They need empathy. So don't involve your experience in their experience, because that derails a whole conversation that the individual is having. So just listen. Even if you're thinking in your mind, boy, I know that happened to me. Don't say that. Just let them talk about what they need to talk about, because they've come to you to talk to you about their experience, not to hear you talk about your experience. And I know sometimes it's difficult when they say something and then they stop and they look at you and think, do you even know what I'm talking about? Do you even know how I feel? Do you know how silly I feel? Do you know how stupid I feel? And I've had some people say that to me. And I just, I just say, well, that must be terrible. I can't imagine how that is, even if I've been through that. And also saying the person's name. Very often an individual's name is one of the most emotionally powerful words to them. Our names have been programmed into us since childhood. This helps us to create an automatic and familiar bond. At the beginning, I always ask them, how would you like me to address you? I have one gentleman, he's about 85 years old. He says, call me Mr. And then he says his last name. So every time, I've been his worker for probably about 10 years, it's still Mr. So-and-so. That's what he's comfortable with. And it might be culturally, it might be as a result of his culture, but I don't think so. I think it's just, he's been Mr. So-and-so for so long. So that's how I address him. Another lady, her name starts with C. That's how she wants me to address her. She says, just call me C. And I go, okay. And another one is, others are their first name. So some of them, they say, well, my nickname is, could you address me like that? So it just shows that, instead of saying, and you, and how do you feel? Sometimes you need to say you, but if someone is talking to me and they're like, so how do you feel? Well, what would you do? Well, what does this mean to you? And if they say, so Rocky, what would you do in a situation like this? It brings it back to the familiar, the familiar ground. You're on the same page as the individual, and it brings a lot more kindness, a lot more empathy, and just a feeling of you're at the right place at the right time. So yes, we'll go on to the next slide. Genuineness. Ability to freely be yourself. Now, sometimes that's a little difficult if you're feeling like, oh my goodness, I'm just not really sure what I should say. This is my first time meeting with the client, and the client can tell if you're not comfortable with them. So this is being congruent with our words and behaviors and our inner feelings. Non-defensiveness, non-role playing, and not being unpretentious. Now, if someone comes and talks to you about they've been sexually abused and you've been sexually abused and you've never dealt with your sexual abuse, through therapy, speaking to an elder, you've done, programming. And if you take on this individual and you show signs of discomfort with this topic, this will become an obstacle to progress and will often lead to client confusion about your support. They will sometimes see that you're feeling signs of emotional trauma, feeling signs of being uncomfortable, and then they will assume the role of, I need to take care of you. And then you've derailed them again. You're not there to do what you need to do. And so you can say things like, I think I should get someone else to help you with this concern. I'm not an expert in this field. I'm not comfortable with dealing with this. You can say that, being honest and being genuine, but I do know someone that can better that will be better able to help you. And are you okay with this? And then you can say to them, I'll check in with you when you're ready to leave. You can also say, would you like me to stay in the meeting with you and the other worker? And very often they'll say yes, because they've already met with you. You've already exchanged names. I'm Rocky and you're C, or your first name, your nickname. So just helping to keep them feeling comfortable and helping them keep on with their whatever they came for. Okay, so we'll go on to the next one. And we can't be everything to everybody. Sometimes when a client comes to our office, or someone comes to our office, or someone is asking for our help, we just, in our worker mind, we believe that we need to do everything for everybody. We're not, like I said, we can't be everything to everybody. We have to understand our roles. We have to understand our limitations. And that's being kind to ourselves as well as to someone else. Because if you're not able to assist them in a professional way and able to assist them in a very inclusive way, then we're not being helpful to them. So just sometimes saying, I'm sorry, I'm not able to assist you with that, but I'll find someone that can help you. And we also need to know that we're human. We don't know everything about everything. But just being aware of what's available in our communities. Unconditional positive regard. And that's understanding that everybody has a right to be heard. Everybody has rights. Everybody has the right to be safe and to be looked at as another human being. We're all one race. We're the human race. And we need to remember that. An expression of caring and nurturance as well as acceptance. We know that very often when someone comes to us that they have been let down by so many professionals as well as family and friends. So very often when I've had individuals come to my office, maybe the 6th person that they've come to this week. So understanding that they've come to you possibly with a lot of baggage, possibly with a lot of letdowns, possibly with a lot of no's, possibly with a lot of doors shut in their face. So just caring for them, showing them that I'm here for you, that I'm listening to you, that I'll do the best to my ability, that I may not be able to give you the support that you need today or next week, but I will give you a resource. And then also checking with that resource, has so-and-so shown up? What kind of things are you able to tell me? What were you able to assist them? They're not going to say, well, I referred them to a therapist so-and-so, but they can say I referred them to a therapist and I've sent them on to looking for housing or something. But just doing the check-in, because very often what they'll do is they'll come back to you and say, so I went to see the therapist, and you can say, yes, and how did that work for you? So just being available to them afterwards. So when you do unconditional positive regard, this includes conveying warmth and speaking with a warm and friendly and kind language and voice. Also conveying acceptance by responding to the individual's message, verbal and nonverbal. Now, if someone comes to me and says, I'm homeless and I need a place, I need some place to stay. I have no money. I'm on SFI. I don't get my check very often. And if I just, kind of lean back and say, that's terrible being homeless. Well, I don't know. I mean, they're not going to come back to me for anything else because I didn't convey warmth. But if I can't provide the housing for them, I can certainly say, well, if I don't know any resources, I can say, let me look into that. And I can get back to you. Is there any place I can get back to? And if they say, hello, I'm homeless, is there any place that I can leave a message? Boyle Street, Mustard Seed. Can you come back? Is there some place that I can meet you at? Listening to what they need and being able to provide that resource is really, really important. And again, doesn't matter if they're homeless. It doesn't matter if they've kept the same clothes on for 6 days. They are bottom line human beings like we all are. Respect, ability to communicate to the individual your sincere belief that every person possesses the inherent strength and the capacity to make it in life. That each person has a right to choose his own alternative and make his own decisions. We are all the experts in our own life. Sometimes, as a worker, we overstep that. We think, well, I know what you need. We don't know what they need. We can guide them, we can support them, but we need to listen to what they are asking for, not what we think they need. And that's respect. I'll say things like, so you said that you are homeless, that you have no family in town. Can you tell me what it is that you're needing? And sometimes I'll say, well, I don't need a home, but yet in my mind, I'm thinking, he said he's homeless, so I need to help him find a home. It's like, no, I just need some place that I can go for meals. I just need some place that I can have some friends that aren't homeless. I just need to go to a meeting, an AA meeting. I just want to go someplace where I can go and have a meal, like a meal at lunchtime. I don't care about breakfast and dinner because I can find my meals for breakfast and dinner. So just listening and hearing what they say, that gets back to the content and context. The content was, he's homeless. The context was, I'm homeless, but I'm not concerned about my homelessness. I'm concerned about maybe relationships with other individuals. And so we'll get on to the next one. Concreteness, keeping communication specific and focused on facts and feelings of relevant concerns while avoiding tangents. Generalization, abstract discussions, or talking about yourself. This includes the following: assisting the individual to identify and work on a specific challenge from the various ones presented. So like I said, this gentleman had come in and he was homeless and he needed a place to go for meals, and he needed, he wanted to go to programs. So what I did is I kept it concrete. Okay, what is the most important thing that you want to talk about today? Without making it a whole long conversation like it looks like I am right now, but I just want to explain so that we're all on the same page, is the one thing that they want today. Helping them to identify that without me saying, so you're homeless, you need a place. What is the one thing that you want to work on? And using questions and suggestions. So you said that you wanted to find a place that you can have lunch every day. So how can I help you with that? What area do you live in? And letting them know that, well, you can go to Mustard Seed, you can go to the church, and if that's in their area. Using here and now focus to emphasize process and content occurring right now. So instead of saying, wait, so how long has it that you've been homeless, like saying they want to talk about today and they want to talk about the future. So don't bring them back past where they want to be. So then sometimes we want to ask questions like, so how long have you been homeless? How long is it since you haven't been around family? We don't want to do that. We want to progress instead of regress. And so we'll get on to the next one. Open questions. This helps a person clarify or explore thoughts or questions, or thoughts or feelings. So sometimes when we ask questions, the individual can answer yes or no. We don't want to answer yes or no. We don't want to ask yes or no questions. We want to ask questions where they can give us a little more information. Because answering yes or no, it doesn't facilitate the exploration. So, but sometimes a person is already doing that. So you don't have to ask a whole bunch of questions. They'll just tell you. And have an intention or purpose for every question that you ask. Like example, who is the person that's closest to you? Like they're saying, I have no support. So you say, okay, so who's the person that's closest to you? After your children, because they're asking for family support. And what do you need to support? When you need support, where do you go? So sometimes people say, well, I don't have anyone that can support me. I don't have any support. So you say, okay, so when was the last time that you were in a position like this? What did you do? What kind of things were happening for you? And then that's helping them look for internal supports. They might say, well, I had a buddy that was, like 3 blocks away from where I'm at right now, and he always helped me. Well, is it possible that that buddy is still available? Or, well, I've gone to Native Counselling and they helped me through court. Okay, well, is it possible that you go back to that organization? Or I've gone to Red Road Healing, like wherever they say that they've received supports before, help them remember those supports. And then also, like I was able to, and then, they're talking about their internal supports. I was able to find on my own, or I was able to do this myself, and just say, well, so are you able to do that again? Because sometimes when we're in trauma or we've been abused, we forget that we do have internal as well as external supports. And avoid asking too many questions or assuming and being an interrogator, because you don't want them to feel like you're judging them or you're an authority or have power over them. So sometimes when we're asking questions, we'll ask one question, they'll answer it. We'll ask another question, they'll answer it. We'll ask another question, they'll answer it. And it's kind of like, well, you're kind of like almost like judging, even though you're not intending for it to be like that. And so we'll go on to the next one. Okay. So we already spoke about that. Okay, best approach is to follow a response to an open-ended question with a paraphrase or reflection, which encourages the client to share more and avoids repetitive pattern of question, answer, question, answer, question, answer. That gets to be a little bit repetitive, and then the client very often will shut down because you're asking all the questions and are having to answer all these questions. So asking a question, and like we said, like I said, an open-ended question where they can give you information without you having to ask a whole bunch of things, a whole bunch of questions. And sometimes as they're answering a question, then they'll stop and you can say, so tell me more about that. I'm not sure what it is that you're saying. Can you just kind of maybe tell me more about what you're talking about? Well, this is interesting. Wow. And then they'll see that you are interested, and then they'll continue on their vein of thought. And self-disclosure. So sometimes an individual will say a whole bunch of things, and then they'll say, well, you don't even know how it is to be a single parent. You don't know how it is to be the youngest. You don't know how it is that, when everyone comes and asks you all the questions, they need all the help, but yet when you need help, no one helps you. And so there's a couple of times I've said, I don't know your experience, but I know my experience of being a single parent. Now, don't go into all the things like I've been a single parent forever, and I've been, and I have 3 children, and, and going on and on about your experience, but just letting them know that you understand the one thing, whether it's being a single parent or, like I wouldn't talk about if I had been sexually abused or if I had been involved in drugs and alcohol. I wouldn't talk about that, because then it gets to be a long conversation. So just something that you can share without it being, a long extended conversation. So nothing real personal. And remember, empathy is not sharing similar experience, but conveying in a caring and understanding manner what the person is feeling and thinking. Sometimes it's a little bit easy to get confused between sympathy and empathy. When people come to you, very often, I would say 99% of the time they come to you, they don't want your sympathy, they want your empathy. They've had sympathy from their friends. They don't need you to be sympathizing, because then that makes it very personal when you do the sympathy, and you don't want to make it a personal visit. You're a professional or a paraprofessional, and you need to continue in that manner. Interpretation, affirmation, affirming, acknowledging, exploring the problem. We do not interpret what the individual has just said. What we can do is provide new meaning, reason, or explanation of behaviors, thoughts, or feelings, so that they see the challenge in a new way. Now, sometimes when we're in our best intentions, we interpret. what the person has said. Now, as we all know, our perception is our reality. So when we interpret, when we paraphrase what the person has said, if we don't get it correct, the client will tell us. They'll say, no, that isn't what it said. And don't apologize, because we all have our reality, we all have our perceptions, but they will just say, no, that's not what I said. And they'll go back and they'll tell you what it is that they've said. And then they'll wait for you to respond. And then when you know, okay, like, so what I'm understanding isn't what they're saying, that's okay. So then you just paraphrase what they've said. Because like one of the things is I had an example. I said, every Friday, one of the clients had said, every Friday, I always have to clean the house to be safe because he comes home drunk and abuses me. So what you're saying is he drinks every Friday. We don't say that, because we said, so then this is what I would say. So what you're saying is he drinks every Friday. Can you think of a safe place that you can go to on the weekends, since this happens every Friday? And the individual said, well, yeah, I didn't realize it was every Friday, but yet they said every Friday. So just helping them to see what they're saying, but sometimes they've normalized it. It's like, yeah, like I'm complaining because it's every Friday, but I don't realize that it's every Friday because I've just kind of normalized that whole behavior. So then, you can help them get the internal resources, find their internal resources. And you wouldn't say things like, is this something you believe you need to go through every weekend? That's not helpful. You're minimizing their trauma. You're making them feel guilty for the trouble for all the, the violence that they're going through, or all the hurt that they're going through. So just being aware of interpretation and affirmation. When you're interpreting, you're affirming what they're saying. So we'll get on to the next one. We can paraphrase, and if it's not accurate, the individual will tell us, yeah, paraphrasing things like, this is hopeless, to, we can say, it seems hopeless to you right now. And a person can say, there's nothing I can do. You can say, you can't find anything that would fix it. And I have no friends too. At this point, you do not feel any connection with anyone, or you feel isolated and alone. So getting them, it's like a solution-focused therapy, getting them from the negative to the positive, but not taking away from what they're saying, just putting it in a new perspective, so that they can deal with it. It's really hard when you're problem saturated, when all the things seem so hopeless. So helping them move out of that, from that hopeless spot to hopeful, from helpless to helpful. And that gives them a lot of, they feel they have control of their life. Information giving and removing obstacles to change, supplying data, opinions, facts, resources, or answers to questions. We don't do that. We don't give them information and removing obstacles to change. We can help them find the data. We don't share our opinions. We don't say, well, like, you're the 15th person that has come to me about homelessness. They don't need to know that. That's not what they want. But helping them find resources, helping them find answers to their questions by you asking some of those open-ended questions, and exploring with the client some of the possible challenges, which are roadblocks for them. And sometimes, like I said, they feel so problem saturated that they can't see, the forest for the trees. So you just kind of you help them overcome those obstacles, but you do it in such a way that you're not telling them what they need to do, but you're helping them, you're guiding them, you're listening to them, and you're hearing those things that they need, and helping them get a clear picture. Because if their picture is all muddy, they don't know where to start. So that's what you're there for, is to hear them, their verbal and their nonverbal. Inflammation, responding to a complaint. When an individual is complaining about you, sometimes I've had clients come in and talk to me, and because some of the work that I do is under the federal government, they'll say, well, you guys don't do this. Well, you guys don't do that. Well, you get paid, and you get paid because of me. It's so easy to take that as a personal insult, but I think, okay, this isn't about me. This individual is really upset. They're upset for a reason. Maybe they've gone to other federal departments and they've been turned away. So this is just, I'm the person that, the next person that they're wanting to, they're thinking maybe that I'm going to do the same thing. So I just allow them to say what they need to say. I listen effectively. I listen to their words. I watch their body language. I don't minimize what they're saying. I don't minimize how they're feeling. I just listen. So, because the aim of the speaker is to tell the listener that they are the problem. They've had, like I said, they've had lots of experience where they've felt like they are the problem. The person at the other end maybe doesn't know about effective listening. Maybe it's the end of their day and this is the 15th phone call they've received, and it's kind of like, oh, you're the last person that I wanted to talk to today. You're the last person before I go home. I'm tired. And so they shut them down without meaning to. And the aim of the listener, let them know that what you have taken in what they're saying. To diffuse the strong emotion, you can say things like, I just heard what you said, or I'm listening to what you said. Because when there's a conflict in their life, very often the other person is blamed. It's very difficult to be objective when the emotional level is high. Correctly labeling the emotion can dissipate the intensity of the emotion. So when, like I said, when the individual themselves have nothing but conflict, they don't have any support, they feel they don't have any resources, you're sitting there in front of them, you're their target without them meaning for you to be the target. So just naming what they're feeling. Like, I can see that you're feeling really upset. I can hear that you're very angry. The way you're sitting, I can tell that you're not feeling safe. Just paying attention to how they're talking, the voice, their tone of voice, the language they use, how they're sitting, how they're leaning forward, and their voices may be really loud, and you know that they're really angry, and just naming those feelings. Okay. So yeah, so you said, but yeah, we've gone through this one. So we need to refrain from. So these are the things that we should not do. Talking about ourselves. Like I said, sometimes it's really easy when someone comes in and says, oh, I'm a single mother of 3 children. And, my SFI check doesn't cover the amount of my rent and my bills. It's so easy to say, I know what you're saying. I've been there. I know what you're saying because, like my taxes just came in. I know what you're saying because I have 6 grandchildren. It's so sometimes it's almost like you want to say, you want to get in there and say, I know what you mean, but we don't do that. We don't talk about ourselves. And sometimes we want to change the topic. The reason that we want to do that is sometimes we're not comfortable with the topic. Or it's a topic that we've heard over and over again, and it's like, oh, not another time that a person's going to talk about whatever it is. So we have to be aware that we don't change the topic. As I've said before, this individual is coming to you to talk to you about their needs and about the things that they want to talk about. We don't advise. We don't say, well, you said your husband comes home every Friday. You should leave him. If it was me, I'd leave him. We don't do that. Diagnosing, we don't say, well, if he drinks every Friday, he must be an alcoholic. We don't reassure them, oh, I think things are going to get better. Like maybe if you talk to him, maybe if you tell him you're going to leave. We don't encourage them. Well, just keep talking to him. Just say, we don't criticize. We don't bait a client. We don't say, well, so you're going to stick around with him. That's not helpful. And we don't say things like things will get better or they're not so bad. Maybe if you didn't didn't watch TV all day, and maybe if you made a good dinner, we don't say things like that. Using or exclusively or too much. Sometimes when a person is talking and you say and then they say something else, or you go or you go any of those things. Don't use them exclusively. Use different, like, wow, oh my goodness, that's terrible, that's interesting. Because otherwise it just, you sound like a robot. And they'll lose interest in talking to you, or they'll just quit, they'll just shut down because they'll know that you're not listening. Pretending to have understood the person if you really have not. Now, if a person is saying something and you're not sure, like sometimes some of the language that I hear today, and I don't mean foul language, I just mean language, like a lady said to me, oh, you're fleek. And I went, oh, could you tell me what that means? And she told me, but I could have said, yeah, and pretended that I knew what she meant. But she meant it as a compliment. And I thought, what? I didn't know what it meant. So just if someone uses a language or they're saying something and you don't understand because you've never been through that, ask questions around that. Say, do you want to tell me more? Or I'm not understanding what you're saying. Could you explain a little bit to me? And they will. They very often will. If they say, no, if you don't understand, that's okay. Then you know that they just wanted to come. And if you're not able to help them right now, then they were not meant to be there, kind of thing. But giving them a resource. Allowing the individual to drift to a less topic because they think you don't understand or it's too difficult a conversation for you. So if a person comes in and talking about one specific thing for the longest time, and then all of a sudden they drift to another conversation, bring them back to that first conversation. And, and you can say, I'm wondering, how come you were talking about, I'm just going to say family violence. All of a sudden you're talking about moving to another community. I'm wondering, like, I'm lost in this conversation. Can we get back to what you were talking about before? Because they may think it's too difficult for you. They see that the expression on your face, or all of a sudden, you're kind of moving around, or you're having little breaths. So they know that, okay, I'm making it uncomfortable for you. So don't allow the individual to drift to a less topic. Allow them to continue on the same topic. And if it does become too uncomfortable for you, then just, like I said before, say, okay, can we just take a couple of minutes here? I'm going to get someone, is it okay if I get someone else to come in and meet with us? And it's one of my coworkers, and the confidentiality agreement is in place. So you don't need to be, concerned that this is going to go to anyone else. But keeping them safe all the time, always be aware of keeping them safe and keeping them, the respect is always there. And don't fix, change, or improve what they've said or finishing their sentences for them. If someone says, like, there's one gentleman and he was talking about body parts. And when he first said tentacles, I said, tell me more about that. Well, then I really quickly realized what he was talking about. So I didn't change the terminology. I just let him say how he needed to say it. And sometimes when it's a difficult conversation, they'll stop to see if you're still if you're still listening. And sometimes it's like, I know what they're going to say, or I think I know what they're going to say, but don't finish their sentence for them. Let them finish their sentence, because you don't know where they're going. So, because otherwise we've made it our own story or experience. Filling in the space of silence with talk. Be comfortable with silence. Don't fill it in thinking, okay, so what else is happening? We just allow that space of silence. And if it gets on, if it's all of a sudden it's becoming too uncomfortable, then you can fill in with, so do you want to tell me more about that? Like all those little things that we've said before. Ignoring their feeling in the situation. Get them to talk about their feelings. If they can't or won't, you can ask them, so how are you feeling right now? Sometimes saying, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the worst feeling, how would you rate yourself? And sometimes I'll say, well, I don't know. And I'll say 1 is really good, 2 is fairly good, 3 is, or you can go the other way, whatever works best for you. But I found with my clients that they like to be number 1 and then going up to 10. And then you can say like, so how does the situation make you feel? What are your thoughts on what you spoke about? You can prompt them with a few words. Like I said, so the family violence you were speaking about, the drinking that you were talking about, I heard that you said that you overuse medication. Using their words as much as possible keeps the conversation in their court and you as the participant, the listener. Okay. So letting them know that they can have more than one feeling at a time. So a person can say, can have come to you many, many times and said, my boyfriend drinks all the time. I don't know what to do about it. And then you just go through the whole process with what things have they done, what things that they have in place. Then all of a sudden, 10 weeks later, they come and they say, my boyfriend is gone, but I miss him. I'm sad that he's gone, but I'm happy that he's not drinking anymore. This isn't unusual. This happens very often, having mixed feelings. And in fact, another lady, she had, there had been some police brutality in her home, and the police were there very often. And she said, oh, the police are always in my house. And all of a sudden, the police didn't come anymore. She said, you know what? I used to complain about the police being in my home all the time with my children, with my husband. She said, now I miss them. And I said, tell me about that. She said, well, I kind of felt a little bit safe when the police would come around. And she said, am I stupid? I said, no, there's no such thing as being stupid. I said, that's okay to have those two feelings. And she felt so good, like knowing that there's nothing crazy about her. So just saying those things, that's very helpful for them. So examples of active listening is nodding your head when someone is talking, smiling when someone is talking, as long as it's appropriate eye contact, leaning towards the speaker, but of course, always giving them their space, always giving them their personal space. And components of active listening. Comprehending. The listener actively analyzes and listens to what the speaker is saying without distraction or thoughts about another subject. Now, we need to be able to analyze, but not be analytical, but you need to be able to listen to what they're saying, like I said, through their body language, through the context and the contents of the words. Retaining, remembering what the person has said so that the speaker's full message can be conveyed. You can take notes. Sometimes a client will say, no, don't take any notes. And other times the client will say, yes, go ahead and take notes. Or you can try some memory tricks. Like the one lady, she had come in and she was talking about abuse. She had been abused at 3 and she had been abused 5 times. Now, I didn't remember the times that she said, at age. So then what I did is I thought 35. And then I was able to say, so with the 35, you were abused, in my mind, was 35. So I knew she was abused at 3 years old and she was abused 5 other times. So because I didn't remember the exact ages and she wanted me to remember, and I said, so I remember the first abuse was at 3. So you wanted to talk about the other abuses? So the second time, and then, oh yeah, I was, and then she said the age, but that was my memory, my little memory trick. But we can all come up with tricks that work for us, little memory tricks that work for us. Responding. So responding is the act of providing both verbal and nonverbal feedback to the speaker that indicates that the listener is both hearing and understanding what the speaker has just said. And saying things like, I can see the way you draw your legs up when you're speaking about. and just noticing things and showing that you are listening to what they're saying. Okay, we'll get on to the next one. And that you are uncomfortable when you spoke about the abuse in your childhood. Like, so when a person is talking about the abuse, they drew their legs up, or they kind of, cuddle themselves. And just mention those things, because if you pay attention to those things and you notice them and you make comment of them in a nice and genuine and respectful way, they'll appreciate that. They'll know that you are paying attention to what they're saying, and they will thank you. Being authentic and accessible, having the time to listen and being there in the space with the individual. Be real. Don't pretend to understand something if you don't know it. Ask the question or say, I do not understand what you're stating or what you're requiring, and stuff like that. And and like I said before, having the time to listen. So that means, are you going to be there for the whole time? Are you available for the whole time? Have you done all the things you need to do to take care of yourself? Because if you say all of a sudden the client is talking and you stop them in the middle of their conversation, oh, I need to go get a glass of water, or I need to go to the washroom, are you going to be okay? They'll say yes, but no, they won't, because you've stopped them in the middle of their thoughts, and that's not very helpful. Be able to listen on multiple levels. Listen to not only what is being said, but how it's being said, why it's being said, and what it means in the context of the particular individual. So that says a lot, but how they're saying it, when they're saying it, why they're saying it, and what it means to them. And that's being able to listen on multiple levels. Think content, delivery, and context. What is the story, how it's being delivered, what it means. You need to listen between the lines without putting your own interpretation in. Because like I said, our perception is our reality. So you need to listen, and you need to analyze, but not being analytical. Being non-reactive and learning the difference between observation and evaluation. So when someone says something, not being non-reactive, and that's not, the facial expressions like, and just listening and being able to do observation and evaluation. Developing a relational connection with the individual, and that first part would be, what can I call you? How do you want me to address you? Having a sense of humor, not stressful humor. Time is everything. Now, if someone says, I was sexually abused, of course, you're not going to have a smile. But then at the end, they may say things, that they want to lighten up the conversation. They want you to smile. They don't want to cause you harm. They don't want you to be sad because of what they said. So being able to smile, but in, like I said, not stressful. Self-reflection. Look within yourself. You need to feel well, think well, and act well. And that's taking care of yourself. Okay. Okay, you can then relate well and emphasize well with the individual. If you're taking care of yourself, you can help the individual take care of themselves by guiding them, by supporting them. You can think critically and listen critically for meaning. You can conduct yourself in the service of the client, community, and your field. So if you take care of yourself, you can help take care of the community, and you can conduct yourself in a professional way. As a listener, you're then able to better relate to the individual and facilitate positive change. So if you have taken care of those things that you need to take care of before the client comes in, and it doesn't hurt the client if someone comes in, you're not prepared for them, you didn't know they were coming in, ask for the reception to hold on, tell them I'll be there in a few minutes. Don't rush to see the client. Take care of yourself before the client before you meet with the client. Because if you're not able to take care of your needs, then you'll be thinking, like I said in the beginning, you'll be thinking of like, oh my goodness, I should have went to the washroom, or I wish I would have remembered my coffee, or I wish I would have had something to eat. I have these cookies at the bottom of my purse. I wish I'd have eaten them. So that's going to detract you from the conversation that the individual is having. Genuine interest in others. Do you have the drive and energy to sit with people through their best and their worst? Can you be fully present for the story, no matter how long or difficult the story or experience is? So don't start with a client if it's the end of the day and you think, oh, I can't do this. Say to them, if you're the only one there, just say, is it possible that we meet tomorrow? This is the end of the day for me, being genuine, this is the end of the day for me. And I really don't feel like I'm going to be available today. And very often they'll say yes. But if you let them know, like not giving them a whole story, like, well, my husband is going to be coming home and if I don't have dinner on the table, then he's going to be mad. Like, they don't need to know that, but just, I need to go home now. I've had to say that to many clients. They'll call me at 4 o'clock. My day ends at 4 o'clock and I'll say, well, can I make an appointment with you tomorrow? And they'll say, oh, can I meet with you today? And I say, well, my hours in the summer are 9 to 4. But I'll certainly call you in the morning, or can you call me in the morning? And very often, once they know that, that you're genuine, that you are not just putting them off, they will call you tomorrow. Or if they don't, then they found someone else that can possibly support them, and hopefully in a good way. And so listening and hearing are two different things. Listening takes effort. It's an active process, a conscious effort. It takes concentration and interest so that you can draw whatever you're listening to. It's physical and psychological. Hearing, it's passive. The individual perceives the sounds without much effort. So sometimes we say, yeah, I hear you. But is that really the thing to say when someone is telling you something that is of interest to them or that's hurtful to them and they want to tell you? So if we say to someone, I'm listening, then that makes, then they feel like, okay, you're listening, you're active, you're actually participating, you're actually there for me, instead of just sitting there and hearing the sounds that I'm making without really putting any effort into into listening to what I'm saying, and any effort into being part of what I'm saying. So there's numerous types of listening. Discriminative listening, this is the most basic part of hearing and understanding languages and sounds. This involves what sounds go together to form words, as well as how tone affects their meaning. So throughout the day, we go through so many different types of listening without even realizing. Comprehensive listening focuses on accurately and understanding the meaning of words spoken and the nonverbal messages. Selective listening, well, we probably all know what selective listening is. And sometimes as a mother, I know I would do selective listening because they would ask me, like my children would ask me, like, can we go outside? And I'd say, no, not until you've had lunch. Well, 10 minutes later, can I go outside? So sometimes I would just ignore that because I've already told them. So I listen to the things that they really need. But yet in the same sentence, I could say, can I go outside? And I'm hungry. Well, can I go outside? But okay, I'll get you something to eat. So we all have selective listening at times. And so going to the next one, appreciative listening. This is when you purposefully listen to appreciate. This could be a recital, a concert, poetry, reading, political speeches. So when we use our appreciative listening, it's because it's something that we enjoy doing, we appreciate. And you have 3 significant factors in this: presentation, perception, and previous experience. Can you imagine going to a speech in Russia and not being able to understand? While on the other hand, you go to a concert of your favorite artist, what would the difference be? And under appreciative listening, well, definitely you would go to your concert or favorite artist and not go to something that you don't understand. Pseudo listening, this is when you hear a noise that is not of particular interest to you, like a football game. I'm not a fan of any sports. So if I'm at some place and they have football on, I do the pseudo listening. I don't really listen. I just pretend I'm listening because they want me to listen to it. And so yeah. Empathetic listening. This is where you're listening to a person that when they're telling you about an unpleasant event, but you have to be engaged. Comprehensive listening, that's listening to a subject when you're requiring specific knowledge, like that's someone is telling you, like, how to be a mechanic, how to lay tile, how to plant a tree, going on YouTube and doing something, getting a YouTube about how to do something. That's the comprehensive listening. Passive listening, this is when someone is talking to an individual and that individual is not engaged in a conversation and hears only the words, only as background noise. And like someone could say, I went skateboarding and I did all these jumps. You're like, but you're not really listening to what they're saying. You're acting like you're listening. Analytical listening, this is where you listen to someone or something and the meaning of the words are interpreted. You analyze it. Defensive listening, the individual has difficulty with sarcastic humor. They assume the speaker's putting them down. Like sometimes when a person goes to see someone and they think that when the person is saying something, it's always about them. Like, for example, I wrote, Rocky can babysit for all of us since she has, this is someone saying this, Rocky can babysit for all of us since she has no boyfriends. That's a defensive listener would say. Everyone thinks I can't get a boyfriend because maybe I just don't want one, or everyone thinks I'm too old to have a boyfriend. But what the person was actually saying is everybody knows that Rocky loves children and there would be 15 kids in all. This was only meant to be a joke. So sometimes when you listen to someone, they're saying something, we take it as a defensive, like, they're talking about us and it's meant to be humorous, but sometimes we don't do that. It could be because it's just the end of the day. So those are some of the different types of listening. So we'll go to the next one.
That's the end of the slide.
Okay. Oh, yes, that's it. So yes.
Thank you, Rocky.
Thank you. Thank you so much to everybody for listening to me for so long.
Do we have any questions? So if you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself or type them in the chat box. I'm gonna start with one question, and it's one of the challenges that we're facing with COVID at this time and doing this work on the phone, because we're using a platform that we will call people and to hear about their cases. And so how do you check yourself? Like, I have noticed that when I'm on the phone for too long, like half an hour, 40 minutes, I started losing my capacity to concentrate in the words and the message that is delivered through the phone, because I don't have the person in front of me. So it's hard to make eye contact, to look at their body language. And so it's easier to get distracted. So are there any ways in which we can check for our attention, or when we are on the phone, or keep a conversation more both like lively, but at the same time like nurturing on the phone? I find that really, really difficult.
Yes, and for me, it really starts with taking care of myself. And I can't say that often enough, taking care of myself, taking care of my needs. And then and I physically look at the time, like, do I have time for this conversation? Because I always assume that my conversation is going to be an hour and a half. Now, do I have that hour and a half? And I don't have any distracting things in my office. My office is very bland because I don't want to be, when someone is talking, I don't want to be looking at pictures. I don't want to be looking at things on my desk. So sometimes I close my eyes when I'm talking to the person. And the reason that I say I pay attention to the time is, if I close my eyes and it's 4:30, am I going to fall asleep on the phone? Mm-hmm. So I pay attention, and sometimes I stand. I get away from my chair and I stand up, and I stretch my legs, I stretch my arms. I just do things to keep myself physically present.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Grace.
I have a question actually for Angelica and Rocky here. So yesterday, my partner and I, we had our call with a client, and it was on the phone service. So I found it a little bit hard, hour and a half, in terms of you can't really see expression and that kind of thing. Like, are we able to use the Zoom, or is there any other kind of services that at least we can see like how they are?
For Stride, yes, we able to Zoom. It's a part of the usually part of the conversation and the I want to look for the word that I'm sorry, I have a word in my mind. The form that they fill to request the service,
Yes.
we ask them if they want the intake.
Yes.
We ask them if they want either be contacted by video conference or a phone call.
Okay.
So they decide,
I
and we
see.
go with what they said. Usually it's the sense of safety for them. Sometimes it's the access to a computer or etc. So maybe what you can discuss with the person next time is it okay if we meet in a video platform for next conversation?
Yes.
And then we can do that. But it depends also on the access they have. We are able to get a Zoom for it.
Oh, okay, that's good to know. Yeah, because she was suggesting we meet in person, and I said, oh, I'm not sure about that. I have to talk to JHC. But I think Zoom would be, kind of appropriate if we can, kind of discuss further that kind of thing.
Yeah. So you let the person, I don't know who the volunteer that you are communicating with, that
Yes.
maybe next time they would like a video conference, and we can set that up for you. Definitely.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for volunteering.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a note here. I'm just going to read it in the chat. It says, thank you for the informative presentation. It comes from Simran. Thank you for the informative presentation. Have you ever had instances where people have asked to speak to a different volunteer and you're suspecting it might be because of racial or gender biases or making they think you are incompetent? How do you handle those situations?
Myself, I have never had anyone make those comments to me, but if they did, I would have no problem with getting someone else to support them, because like I said, it would not be about me. It would be about the individual feeling comfortable with who they're speaking to. And I mean, I can't help my culture, nor will I apologize for my culture, but also the individual can't help their culture. They can't, I mean, this is the way how we try to get over racism, discrimination. And if I said, well, no, I mean, I'm the worker here, I'm going to help you, then it just kind of reinforces that I'm of this culture and I'm still going to take control. So just giving them back the control. And I would have no problem if someone said, like, I don't want to work with you. I don't feel you're competent. I'd rather have a man. I'd rather have someone from another culture. I would be fine with that, because it's not about me, it's about them. But I've never had that happen yet.
Thank you. Any other question?
Hi, I'm Catherine. I have a question. I just understanding that about the body language. Sometimes they're using slang word, and we cannot ask them to repeat that. Can we let it go? Because like I have an experience, even if I never know do the advocacy like enemy in person. I didn't get any interview or anything, but in my own experience, when I was sitting some Alberta workplace, and I can see next to my client, there was a client, and they're speaking very slang word, like and then I saw the who was helping as a customer representative, he have a react on the body language, like he get mad and he say, what do you say, like that even if they say bad word or anything, that's let it go.
Yes, like I was saying, like we speak in the same language as the client, but I mean, if the client is using slang language, if they're using offensive language, I wouldn't correct them, but I would say, so just so I'm correct, so I know what you're saying, is this what you're saying? And that's paraphrasing, right?
Yes.
And so it's not seen as correcting, it's seen as paraphrasing. So I want to understand that what you're saying is what I'm understanding. But yeah, I wouldn't say, so when you said such and such,
Yeah.
this is what it means.
Yeah, that sometimes it's hard to understand some slang word. And
Yes.
I was really surprised because she's tried to help, and the customer who was helping customer representative, he was mad, and I was thinking, oh my God. And then he just walk out, and it's make the person uncomfortable because maybe they don't know the real word, and then they're getting mad.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm gonna ask one more question while we let people warm up. Because one of the things we do to be able to file a human rights complaint, we will need a lot of details about the story. And Rocky, you were saying that it's better not to, like, we should not ask questions that put people back into the bad part of their story, but actually do a positive, kind of like a positive and looking forward spin to the question. That's how I understood it. So instead of asking how long have you been homeless, like what is your expectation in terms of housing or something like that. So, but it's, again, we need to ask for those details, unfortunately, so we can put it in the form. So how we can ask for those details without putting people back in the difficult past or in the difficult situation of their, or how to do it in a gentle, kind way, knowing that we might steer those feelings on them.
Yes, and you're correct. Like, I mean, if someone is coming to you and they want to talk about their homeless, like today, and I guess I should have explained that a little bit better. Like when you know someone is trying to go forward, don't bring them backward. But if they're coming to you that you need to be filling out a form and they're saying I'm homeless, you can't just write down homeless. You can say things. So when was the first time you became homeless, instead of like, how long have you been homeless? Just using those words so that we don't want to embarrass anyone and we don't want to bring anyone way back when, but sometimes when we're filling out forms, we need to know specific questions. We try to not keep them back there. But
Okay.
there are times that we need to say, you know, I mean, someone will say, well, I've been divorced. You don't say, okay, so you don't think in your mind, so today we're not going to talk about the divorce, we're going to talk about going forward. They may need to tell you, I've been divorced for 6 years. For 6 years, I have not received any money. So then you need to know, like, there's times that you need to ask those questions, but just don't keep them there in that, you know, in the past.
Okay, thank you.
I have another question here. So Rocky, when you were talking about listening in an empathetic manner, you said, you know, certainly it's more about their story. But previously in, you know, some of the other courses I've attended, you know, as a business student, etc., things like that, you know, they've said that being empathetic also, you know, could possibly involve, you know, you sharing something that, you know, is similar. So is there any context of, you know, that kind of sharing at all, or in your perspective in the social work that you do, in the clientele that you manage, that being empathetic like involves us like not sharing anything about us?
So you're, just so I get it correctly, so you're asking, is there a time that you wouldn't share your personal story?
Not story, like in terms of if they're saying something and then to empathize, you're you know, giving some information about yourself that you're understanding.
Well, one of the things is you don't share anything that's personal, right? Like a real personal story. But yes, like I was saying previously, if someone says, you know, like, I've been a single mom for 6 years and I have 3 children and I'm, you know, and my SFI check doesn't come in, my ex-husband isn't paying. And so, you know, you can say when there's that little space where they stop and they're kind of looking at you like, do you even understand what I'm saying? You can say something like, I was a single parent when my children were young. So I don't know your experience, but I'm just talking from my experience.
Okay.
And then that's it. Like, you know, you don't say, you know, like, well, you know, this is what he used to do and this is where I lived. They don't need to know that. That's not important. But just so there's that connection, that relation. Yes.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yes.
Do you have any more questions? Let's be comfortable with silence and wait a little bit.
Yes.
Thank you, Angelica.
Roxanne?
Yeah, I'll just make one comment. I really appreciated, I know it's hard to understand about the empathy and not relating the personal stories. And I was kind of giggling as you were saying that, because we need to tell every psychologist, because I've seen a lot of mental health people over the years, and that's actually one thing that has annoyed me, is I don't want to hear their stories about their kids, or, you know, how they had a situation that's somewhat similar, when in reality, it's not. And it sort of devalues their input when they share things that really don't relate. Whereas I appreciate the paraphrasing, right, to make sure that they're understanding what I'm saying. So I just wanted to say, great presentation, Rocky. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Okay. Well, it seems that we have come to an end. Thank you again, Rocky. And sorry, I'm looking to the side because I have my other screen on this side and I have your faces there. But thank you so much. Thank you for sharing with us your knowledge and your experience. And thank you to everyone for being here today. And so we're going to try to do another one for the people who weren't able to register in the next months ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate your attendance, and I appreciate you staying through the whole thing. So thank you.
Mm.